Cathryn Bozone is a Atlanta born and raised artist. She, this is her painting. It says, "Somebody after all had to make a start." The contrast and composition and blending in general portrait work here is pretty dramatic. She's got great energy and enthusiasm. Her focus was on women's rights and patriarchal subjugation, persistent inequalities. Don't smoke, it's bad for your eggs. Don't study, you're a homemaker. Confess to the treason and repent. Don't you want to have Nazi children? Just the pressures of being a young woman in that society that Sophie faced, and relating it to her own experience as a woman today, where those problems have not gone away. There's a really dark and foreboding nightmare described in Sophie's diary, where she's holding a baby and has just has time to set it on a ledge before she's consumed by an abyss. So there's this kind of childlike quality here, kind of a ghost child kind of theme. Cathryn also focused a lot here on the victory of words and ideas. She's holding that little pencil. The pen is mightier than the sword. Strong mind, the power of women to change the world. A lot of Bozone's art is about scale. She's short, she's under 5 foot tall, and she has a history of working with chalk as well as murals, and therefore she's used to enlarging her subject matter. So through that, she's fostered a fascination with tiny flowers and bugs, and she pulls the viewer into these tiny, beautiful worlds like a shrink ray. So conceptually, the little subject and big picture juxtaposition kind of translates into similar notions. For the Sophie SCHOLL project, she started exploring how little movements can cause big change. Little girls can topple giant oppressive patriarchies, and a tiny little pencil with one small start and a few words, mustering your strength can create this frequency that forces its way across time, on the same kind of wavelength as other nonviolent leaders. You will notice that I've taken my photos and then amped up the saturation here to kind of give you a better sense of looking at the paintings. So that'll be going forth. I do that on all the paintings. So that's the notice for the contrast. Dizzy Dain is, I know Dizzy as a portrait artist, but she deliberately avoided portraying Sophie here. And the reason is she was kind of solving a problem with the potentially negative subject matter and engaging public art. So especially within the context of the Krog Tunnel and the Ford Warrior murals, she didn't want negative energy or tension, but a more inviting and attractive magnetic vibe that welcomed viewers into the painting, into the story, where they might be encouraged to learn more, read the words, and then wonder who wrote this and why are they about to go to their death. She also recognized Sophie wasn't the leader or president of the White Rose. It was a collective, and there are other people who risked their lives and lost them, including her brother. So it's about a whole group, and it's about words. So here we have the drifting petals or leaflets becoming ghosts or thoughts and ideas kind of falling over the skyline of Atlanta, falling all around us. She's definitely working off emotion and frustration here, where the roses in the sky are crumpled up drafts of the leaflets. So like you might be sitting at a typewriter thinking, how am I supposed to convince people to rise up and topple the government, and then just endlessly crumpling them up and tossing them into the bin? But they've turned into these roses. Dizzy was attracted to what she called the hopeless optimism, where kind of like fate is inevitable, but you try anyway. Sort of the let this cup pass from me, Jesus in the garden. I know what I've got to do, but I don't want to do it. Because I'm not sure it's going to work, and I don't want to fail or die for nothing. So it's heavy conceptually, but approachable and beautiful. And she sort of rips the veil off the death row perp walk, into this fairly ominous setting sun with the leaflets sort of falling like ashes, but it's somehow very hopeful. And you know, there's a promise of daylight or the resurrection after it. And the words are Sophie's last words as she walks to the guillotine. Krista Jones, also known as Jonesy, is one of the more mature artists in terms of her career and life experiences. She's an activist. She's active with progressive organizations that promotes justice. She has a good, you know, freedom fighter vocabulary and strong command of art words, and her pieces have these very deep layers. So in her interview, Krista talks a lot about intention. With her process of discovery, she printed the leaflets, cut them up, made a collage, and through that exploration, discovered what the painting wanted to be, right? So this piece has what she calls a quiet strength, and the reference photo that she selected was intentionally androgynous, so it kind of recalls both Sophie and Hans, and explores a little of Hans's bisexuality, or, you know, it's them or it's both, it's neither man nor woman. The color of the ink and the typeface is very thoughtful and historically accurate here. I kind of amped up the contrast to bring out the purple, but she's trying to recall how some black inks have that little purple tinge. She also submitted a proposal for the rest of the space, which ties it into a larger body of her work that has vines and this idea of twisted yet linear growth, and brings out a little more color in it too. Next is Eric 9. Eric's piece has a lot of action, and there's this enthralling kind of narrative. Sophie's this kind of modern woman, a bit anachronistically or timeless. It's got an element of platformer video games and a boost of kind of youthful energy. The artist in his body of work plays a lot with fragility and deceptive strength. So his usual cast of characters, he compares himself admittedly to the subjects. He paints ballerinas that are stronger and more athletic than he will ever be, but, you know, appear fragile. He's paints a lot of awkward elephants, but aspires to their hidden wisdom. And Sophie here is way more of a hardcore tagger than he is. So he's run from the cops with a backpack full of spray cans before. He's hidden from train yard security, but this is life or death, right? And so he's exploring the idea of hitting the street kind of hard, turning up being present in the fight for minds, and wondering if he has the strength of this, you know, skinny little girl that he's painted. The leaflets are turning into doves and spreading the message further than she ever dreamed in her lifetime. My favorite quote from Eric in his interview was, "I love the idea of changing the future by learning about the past." The graffiti words in the background, it's based on an actual photograph that was likely the White Rose. And it says, "We want our freedom." Rebecca Shenfeld. Rebecca uses the pronouns they, them. Rebecca is primarily an illustrator and animation artist. And you can see a lot of movement and kind of storyboarding in this canvas. It's a incredibly personal and spiritual approach. The hands, let me see if I have a detail of the hands. The hands have these scars that reference her great-grandmother being hanged by the Nazis. She grabbed the rope to save her neck, and it cut her hands. And she bore those scars silently in family photos for the rest of her life. But lives here again in these ethereal heavenly hands, kind of cutting the rose or slashing this time in the sky. There's a ton of symbolism and open questions here for the viewer. Sophie, I'm going to kind of move my mouse around here. Sophie is sort of in the middle here, dancing in front of the guillotine. You know, Sophie was a young girl. She loved jazz, and her world was on the brink of a terrible doom. Rebecca had a very strict religious education until later in life, and consciously or not, I really kind of recognize in this guillotine, if any of y'all are familiar with the Kabbalistic tree of life diagram with the interconnected Sephiroth, I see that in this kind of geometric pattern there, but like cut in half. You've got Sophie down here chilling with her brother and his war buddy friends that came back from Poland and decided that they needed to, you know, oppose the war effort. They were all medics because they were kind of morally opposed anyway. But that's her with them. She is over here in this kind of lotus pose, catching or releasing the leaflets. So there's this kind of Mexican muralist, Diego Rivera Siqueiros kind of grand storytelling aspect to this that I think plays into the artist's familiarity with timelines and spatial momentum. Rebecca is the youngest candidate, but this artist has a degree from RISD and spent 5 years making avant-garde cartoons at Adult Swim. Their style is very illustrative, maybe less painterly, but Sophie's story is kind of this story of guts, right? The White Rose had university professors and medical students and philosophy majors, but it was a 21-year-old girl who volunteered to drop lift their treasonous literature. And they weren't artists, but spray painting a big black X over a swastika had more impact than anything else you could do with paint. And was a one-way ticket to the re-education camps. So I like that Rebecca gravitated to this quote from Sophie: "The smallest candle burns just like the brightest torch. I choose my own way to burn." This is a very unique piece. There's a heavy emotional investment. And not for nothing, it's the only artist whose family had direct contact with the so-called final solution. This painting had intentionally exuberant colors, primarily in reaction to Sophie's profound spiritual connection to the moment and connection to the beauty of the natural world. And Rebecca also gravitated towards Sophie's diary entry after she touched a tree. She said, "I'm so indescribably happy in this instant." So that was the reason for some of the color choices. The painting relates to the artist's family, to Rebecca's Russian mother, the Reichstag fire, and today with the young artist adrift, trying to find themselves creatively and spiritually in this kind of chaotic swirl of tumultuous times. My favorite interview quote from Rebecca was, "Be brave and strong if you can be, and you can be." This is Yuzly Mathurin. Yuzly spent maybe another 30 hours on this painting after I thought it was finished. The detail work is exquisite. The dramatic shading is superb. And the figure is staring, straight out at you into your soul. It's a very powerful painting. Yuzly had a very emotional and deep connection with Sophie as well, and her struggles. Yuzly and I talked a lot about her childhood, where there were some hard and confusing times finding her place or finding a safe place. I guess some words that Yuzly used to describe herself include, she's a Haitian American artist, a daughter, a proud single mother, a staunch mental health advocate, and survivor of abuse, social justice activist, struggling artist. She's a storyteller and a photographer. Yuzly's mother kind of obscured the fact that she was 8 months pregnant when she emigrated from Haiti, and then Yuzly had this very strict, isolating upbringing, which had its own trauma, with a heavy schedule of church and, I guess, beatings if she stayed after school for soccer practice. with these attempts to kind of raise her as Roman Catholic Haitian against the pressures of living, near Jacksonville, Florida. The painting itself has this amazing detail on the flowers. The daisies were Sophie's favorite, providing some brilliant yellow highlights here, while the shading of the white rose petals is very delicate, has this kind of gripping, fluffy softness that contrasts with the stern and stoic gaze from Sophie, with her full-on straight ahead, eyes that are have all the passion and power of this sure and just and perhaps doomed woman. At the bottom, it says human rights for all. As a student, usually dreamt of painting on walls and doodled graffiti bubble letters on her notebooks. Kind of wishing that she could get up and paint murals. And so as an adult, she has preserved that style, and those letters have found their way into her art as an adult. So I think it's important to see that connection between her younger self and the mature yet still learning artist and mother and person that she is today.